welcome to the SAP Developers YouTube channel, and welcome to Hands-on SAP Dev, and welcome to this first episode of Back to Basics Web Development. Right, let me see if I have figured it out, so I'll just put something in the chat. Hi everyone. Right, can you just give me a hi in the chat, just so I know that the setup works before we get started? And I know that we have a 20-second delay between what I say and what my voice is echoing. Okay. Can someone else confirm that? Okay. The voice is weird. All right, give me a second. All right. How's my voice now? Can you hear me now? Let me give me a quick signal in the chat how the sound is now. Can you hear me, guys? That's better. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, not my preferred choice with the headset. I think the quality should be lower than the other mic, but if that was echoey, we'll go with the headset. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, we'll figure it out. It's the first episode. I guess we'll figure it out. Okay. So we are here to talk about web development. But as you know, this is a hands-on SAP Dev live stream, and we're not handing out any certificates. We are not, following any strict agenda. We're not in college, right? This is not an official course or something like that. We're here to have fun, to learn along the way, and to have a little bit of interaction. Still a little bit of echo. Okay. Well, maybe. Oh, I think I might know where it came from. Anyway, let me know if it's better now. I think I had two inputs. Whatever. So we're not following any strict agenda. We're here to have some fun, and we're here to have a little bit of an interaction, right? And so before I actually dive into the content, of course, I have prepared a little something. I'm not gonna just do nothing for an hour here, but before we get started with the content, why don't you give me a quick info in the chat? What's your expectation? What's the kind of topic you wish to see here? All right, sounds better. Cool. Thanks, guys. So what do you expect from this web development series? I mean, web development is such a broad topic that we could talk about really anything. And probably everything's connected to the web. So if you're a developer, you are a web developer, I guess. So let me know what you expect from this live stream series here. And then we'll see if that fits with the overall idea that I have in my head. And then we'll figure it out along the way. Okay. Let's see. So if you don't have any ideas what to expect, I'll just start with what I have prepared and what I had in my head. So to me, web development is not just front-end development, as some people might think we're associated with. To me, it's much more. It's also the server. it's also it's security. It's thinking about the overall architecture. It's thinking about performance, debugging skills, obviously. Yeah, probably SAP, Tech, UI5, CAP. Yeah, basic concept that feed into UI5. Yeah, also true. Yeah, that's perfect actually, because we will start out with the more basic concepts and then we'll work our way up to UI5 and CAP and all these things. Um, because UI5 and CAP are sort of happening on a different abstraction layer. It's like a layer on top of like raw web development, and we want to make sure that we get the basics right. After all, this is called back to basics. So we'll start out really small, and then we'll work our way up to these more advanced topics, and then we'll also talk about new stuff like new releases and things like that. But we will start with the absolute basics with the raw HTML, CSS, JavaScript kind of thing. Keep in mind there's a 6 to 7. Yeah, I know. I think it's even more like 20-second delay. I know, I know. Okay, so it would be great to see some SAP related, preferably UI5, but when it's web dev basics, you may have something else in mind. Yeah, yeah, as I said, we'll start out small and then work our way up to the more advanced topics. All right, cool. So let's switch to the other scene that I have prepared. All right, we're back, we're back, we're back. We're back, we're back, we're back. I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me now, folks? I think we're back. Yeah, it's because I switched to the headset, right? And I didn't have the headset in the other scene, right? So we're still figuring it out along the way. Okay. I was going to say, I do have a pencil, but it's the second generation and doesn't work with my old iPad. Okay, so we have the front end and we have the back end. And a lot of people know video though. Oh yeah, I think there was a small phase where I had the camera turned off. So I see web dev as front end and back end. Front end web development, right? Your client side stuff. Um, that's that's a whole beast in itself, but so is the server, right? And for the front end, we have this box right here, and I call that the client, right? And then we have this box right here, and we'll say that is the server. Okay, and when you visit a web page, right, you're developing a web page, what you want is you want users to use their browser preferably, which then acts as the so-called client, and they visit your web page, which lives on a server, right, and they send a request to the server, right? That is the request. They send a request to the server. That's basically like going to youtube.com and saying, give me the information that is on this web page, right? It's an HTTP GET request, right? And what a server then does it sends a response back. It sends the response back, and that is usually some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Right? So that's the overall super basic architecture that we have with any web app in the world, right? There's a client part and then there's a server part. So I just said that clients are usually browsers. That is when you're building a web page, but you might, of course, also just build a API, right? Which is basically only this server part here, and it just instead of responding with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it responds with some sort of data. Okay, and in that case, a client could be anything. It could be a browser, but it could also be Postman or curl or any other uh, thing that is capable of performing HTTP requests. But we will actually start with the browser being the client, just so that we you know get started with this overall building a web page idea. And in some cases, the server is which is sort of the opposite of building an API. It is sometimes sufficient if the server only does this piece right here, right? It only serves HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a pure web server. It does nothing else but serve this web page. But in most cases, servers have to perform much more. They have to, you know, authenticate users. They have to perform some kind of back-end logic like calculations. They have to fetch data from other sources like external APIs. Usually servers do much more than just serving the web page. So a big part of web development is deciding what does the client do and what does the server do. And I put so much emphasis on that because to me, I started out as a front end developer, and um, I had this tendency to put all my logic in the front end, which is obviously not ideal because if it is sent alongside the response to the client, and it runs in that scope, right? The code runs in the client's browser. There's obviously security issues there because clients can just inspect your code and see what you're doing, and then eventually find a leak or manipulate something or something along those lines. So a big part of web development is understanding where do I put things and in what scope do I want things to be in, and where do I debug and things like that. Because also debugging the client side versus the server side is very different, and the code runs in different scopes and all of that. And probably most of you know all this, right? You know that when you build a backend and you have some backend logic, you debug it in your local environment, and then the code that gets sent to the client runs in the browser, and you debug it in the browser, and all of these things. You probably know all of that, but we're here in the Back to Basics series, so we want to make sure we really get into the basics of things and explain everything sort of from scratch, right? So that's why I start out so basic. Okay, so JavaScript. Let's talk about JavaScript. This piece right here. And by the way, feel free to put your questions in the chat if you want to. So let's talk about JavaScript, because JavaScript is really the logic of our apps, right? HTML is just saying we have things, we have item, like we have a title, we have a paragraph, we have a table, whatever. It's just the things that we have. And then CSS makes sure these things look cool, like they have nice colors, and we can hover over things and they change their appearance and things like that. But JavaScript is really where the magic lives. And the fantastic thing about JavaScript is that it can run both on the server and on the client, right? On the server, we call it Node.js. That's the runtime environment for JavaScript on the server. I'll just put that here as well. Node.js, and when it runs on the client, we just call it JavaScript or sometimes vanilla JavaScript. That is when we don't use any framework to write our front-end client-side code. And vanilla, in case you don't know, is sometimes used to just describe something in its raw form, like when you use a language in its raw form without additional abstraction layers on top. We call it vanilla. I don't know where that came from, but that's just the way it is. So Node.js is the server-side part of JavaScript, and then we have vanilla JavaScript or just JavaScript on the client side. And the powerful thing about that is that both Node.js and JavaScript in the browser actually use the same runtime, which is Chrome, which is the V8 engine, V8, and it's Chromium based. So uh, your Google Chrome browser has basically the same JavaScript runtime as Node.js. And this compatibility is probably the reason why Node.js gained gained such incredible momentum and is so incredibly popular, right? Also, CAP, for example, the Cloud Application Programming Model, supports Node.js. It's just this very popular choice when building backend servers. Another feedback, your webcam video feeds follows your face. It's a little weird in my opinion. You can turn that off. Yeah, I think that is due to my iPhone. I'm using my iPhone as a webcam, and that's just native to the iPhone webcam. I don't think I can turn that off. I'll I'll try and do some research after this live stream, but I don't think I can turn it off, to be honest. I might use a different webcam though if it's super annoying. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, so that is why Node.js is so popular, right? Because it's the same runtime. And for that reason, we can also use the same libraries for the most part on the server and on the client. So let's say you have some library that handles dates or that handles some mathematical calculations or some library that does whatever image generation or I don't know, something, right? You can use that same library on the server and on the client. But then it goes back to my earlier thing that I said that you have to decide where to put your logic, right? Because you don't want clients to see everything. In fact, you want clients to see the absolute minimum they have to see to make it work, right? So that's the overall JavaScript land explained in a couple of minutes. And now, because Node.js is so powerful and because I praise JavaScript so much, we'll actually start this live stream series with building our own Node.js server. And I start out with a server instead of starting out with a client because I think the server is actually more important than the client and it's more powerful and more capable and you should put more code on the server. Um, that's why I start out with a server. Okay, so let's go to the main scene, and I might be cut off audio-wise for a second. All right, I think and hope you can hear me. So we are in a terminal here, right? And I love the terminal, and we will actually do this back to basics series in a terminal. You won't see a VS Code window in this live stream, and you won't see a Business Application Studio window. You will just see this. You will just see the terminal, okay? So bear with me, and I'll explain things and what I do and all of that along the lines as well. So let's start building a Node.js server, okay? Before we build a Node.js server, we first need a Node.js app. And we can build a Node.js app very simply. I will just create a new file called index.js. right? And in here, I will just do a console log, and I just say hello world, okay? I think that is your plan, but I guess you explained the underlying basis of cab in UI5, like start with Node.js backend, like Express for cab. Bingo, exactly. We'll start out with Express in just a second. So that is a Node.js app. It's pretty simple, right? We just say hello world to the console. So let me, oh, yeah, okay. So let's quit all of that. Let's actually open this in a tmux session. So we have two, oh boy. So we have two windows. And at the top, I'll go back to the editor. And at the bottom, I'll just say node index.js. So I can now use the node command to execute my Node.js application, right? And what it does, it says, hello world. Beautiful. Okay. So that is this index.js file run in the Node.js scope. Okay. It just says hello world. Okay. But to make our, app a little more into an app instead of just one file, we will add a new file called package.json to it. And a package.json is really the application descriptor for Node.js files. Uh, you could say what a manifest.json is for a UI5 app or for any client-side front-end web app. That is the package.json for a Node.js backend application. Okay, and I do have some code prepared here. So in here, I just say, oh, there's a typo there. In here, I just say our application has a name, hands-on SAP Dev, Web Dev. It has a description. It's just a simple web server. It's a version. Um, it's a type module. And I think we're going to get into the differences between ESM, like ECMAScript 6 modules, and CommonJS at some point. But for now, we're just going to leave it, just going to ignore it. It's just a module. It is what it is. And then we have one script, the start script, which is the exact same command I just put in the console, at the console at the bottom a minute ago. Okay, so let's save that. And now in the terminal window at the bottom, we can now, instead of saying node index.js, we can now use this start script. So we'll actually just say npm start. And what it does is, you can see here, it's finding this app, hands-on SAP Web, hands-on SAP Dev, Web Dev, its version, and then the start script. So it sees the package.json, and then it executes this command, right? And then it prints out hello world. So you could say that this start script works sort of as an alias to our commands. So imagine we have a command that is longer and it has, I don't know, some option, true, whatever. It has like more things, right? Instead of always typing that out manually, we can just define a script and have it sit there and just use the alias for it. Okay. So that's our basic Node.js application. And now we are on a mission to build a Node.js web server. Okay. And for that, we're going to use a very popular package called Express. Oh, so I'll say npm install Express. And npm is the Node package manager. It's the package manager that comes with Node.js, and it's basically, yeah, performing your installations. It actually, we used it before, right? When we said npm start right here, we also use the Node package manager. So whenever we work with a package.json, I guess you could say we use the npm tooling for that. When we say npm install express, we say, hey, npm, please add the express dependency, this package, to our package.json. And what npm then does, it goes to the package registry, it fetches the package from the internet, from somewhere, and it puts it into our local node modules here. I don't think that's the current version of the file, is it? There we go. So we can see that npm actually added this dependencies section to our package.json. And we now have one dependency, which is express with the version 4.21.1. And this little symbol here just means take the latest of version 4. Okay. So it puts the dependency in this node modules folder. And as you can see, there is a lot of things here in the node modules folder. So you might think, why do I have a million things in the node modules directory, even though I just installed one thing? I just installed Express. Well, that is because Express itself has a whole bunch of dependencies. We can actually go in here and you can see that Express and its own has a package.json and it has a lot of contributors. So let's search for dependencies. There we go. And it has a whole bunch of dependencies in itself, right? And these dependencies or Node.js apps in themselves, they have package.jsons where they define dependencies, and these dependencies define dependencies, and these dependencies define dependencies, and so on. You get the point, right? So that's why we have so many things in the node modules directory. And what's also new is this package lock.json. And this is also auto-generated, so you should never really touch this manually. We'll check it out once now and then probably forget about it. So we can see it has 707 lines, right? And it's basically locking all your dependencies version-wise. So it makes sure that when we run an install again here, it will install the same versions of the packages. So if we want to delete, like if we were to delete this package lock.json and run an install again, we will probably get slightly different node modules, like with updated versions and all of that, than if we were to keep this package lock.json, right? But as I said, we're probably gonna look at it once and then forget about it. And we can get into this discussion of whether we want to commit this package log.json to GitHub or to your repository or not, and you should do it, but it's a discussion in itself. Okay, cool. So now we have installed Express, right? So let's go into our index.js again, and what we can do now is, you know what, I'll just type this out manually. Okay, so what we can now do is we can say import Express from Express. And also another interesting thing about JavaScript is that it has evolved so much over time that there's a lot of different styles and ways you can do things. One of these things is semicolons. And you can see here that GitHub Copilot actually suggests a semicolon now at the end of the line, which would be the right thing to do, but I don't like them. I don't like the way they look, so I'll just ignore them because it actually works perfectly fine without semicolons as well. But yeah, you can leave your thoughts in the chat if you want. I know that some people do like a more old school look to JavaScript. I guess it probably also depends what other programming language you're coming from, and yeah. But I like things clean and minimalistic, so I skip the semicolons. Okay. And now we can actually see the next suggestion from, oh no, not that one, this one. The next suggestion from GitHub Copilot, which is to use this express thing execute it, and store that thing in a constant variable called app. And I'll accept that. So now we have instantiated our new app using Express. And now going back to the whole client side, server side thing, the term app could be C# for the win. There you go. The term app could actually be a little misleading here because if you talk to non-developers, what they think when they hear app is probably the client side things, right? It's probably the things that they see in their browser. That's the app. Or maybe some would even think that an app is only a native app on a smartphone, right? But an app in the whole, it's not just only the cloud space, it's also software development in general. It's really anything that does something, right? So could also be an API, it's also an app. Like it's just a matter of how you define things. But app here has nothing to do with the stuff that gets sent to the server. It's the backend app, you could say. It's the backend logic, right? So we could also call it server. Maybe that would make more sense. But we'll stick with app because when using Express, everybody uses app. That's also why GitHub Copilot probably suggested it, because the internet is full of people calling it app. All right. Cool. So now GitHub Copilot knows exactly what I want to do, which is use this app and define a new endpoint. So we now say with app.get, so we use the app object and we execute the get method, and then we say that whenever someone hits the root path, which is just slash, we want to execute something. And what we want to execute is we want to, and we'll get into this request and response things in here in just a second. So then we get the response, and then we send hello world. Okay, so going back to our nice little diagram here, I actually on purpose called these things or abbreviated these things with rec and res, so with a request and response, because that's usually what we call the request and response objects in Express and also in the SAP Cloud Application Program model because it's based on Express and or powered by Express, like the underlying web server is based on Express. Obviously, Cap adds a whole lot of things on top of it, but so it's rec and res. The request is the thing that the client sends to us. In this case, it's a GET request. It's an HTTP GET request to the root path or to any path. In this case, the root path. And then the response is the thing that we send back. So we send the response and it's just hello world. Okay, so go back to the main scene. So you could think that now this app is finished, but actually we haven't exposed our app, on a port. So the server hasn't been attached to a port so that it actually is connected to, the internet, whatever the server is connected to, but it's not exposed on a port, so it's not like reachable yet. Okay, so we'll just define a port here. 3000 is a good choice, and then we can say app listen to this port. Bit late to the party. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marco. So we listen to the port, or we listen on that port, and once that's done, we say server is running on port. Okay, and thank you GitHub Copilot for this suggestion. Okay, so now that is our very, very, very basic server done right here. So I'll now write all, quit all, and I will say npm start. Okay, cool. So again, it executed the node index.js command in here as we defined it in the package.json, and the server is running on port 3000. And we can actually see that the process is still running, right? So I can kill it with Control C, and I can start it back up. But it's not like the just saying console log hello world that we did in the beginning, which just executed once and it was done. Because we said app listen, it just keeps listening. It keeps listening. It keeps waiting for requests, right? And any website you visit in the world is basically doing that thing. It's waiting for your requests. Okay. So now at the bottom here, we can now fetch this data. So I said in the beginning that a client is usually a browser, but since we're not sending back any HTML, any CSS or JavaScript here, we don't need a browser to interpret the data or the things that come back because it's just hello world, it's just text, right? So I could just use curl in this case, local ghost. This is my most common typo, honestly, local ghost. So I can just say curl HTTP localhost 3000, and that is just sending a GET request to this Node.js Express server that we just created, and we get the response back. We get hello world back, right? And this is actually like what we did here. And I'll kill this again, go back in here. What we did here is we actually built a Node.js Express backend server, and we actually implemented server-side rendering without even knowing, because the thing that we sent back is like instantly there. There's no client-side JavaScript, React, Vue.js, Angular magic that needs to happen in order to make sense of. I need an alias for git pete set ll. Yeah, good one. Actually, I'll get back to that in just a second. So we actually implemented server-side rendering because the thing that we sent to the client in our response is like instantly, you know, there. Like it just makes sense instantly. There's no additional magic required to make sense of that piece that we just got, right? Because it's just hello world. It's just a text, which is actually pretty cool. So I think that sometimes when you go like super back to the basics, um, it's nice how you get also back some of the gifts of how simple things can be. And now, if you were to use some sort of framework and things on top and more abstraction layers and blah, 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 it would then be hard to go back to some simple architecture and, to get these simple features back. But with like just when you just raw dog it, it just sometimes it's just easier to get things done. That's why I enjoy this Back to Basics series so much. All right, so that is our Node.js Express backend server, and I'll back Marian to your git pete set ll. Actually, I think there's a few aliases built into npm. Let's see if I can get one like that. No, but I know that for I think npm. No, there's some. Oh, there we go. It actually worked. So if we had a test script and just instead of just a start script, so let's go back to our package.json. We only have a start script here, right? But if we had a test script, we could also type npm tst instead of test, and it would still work. See, when I type npm tst, it actually knows that it's missing the script test. So it knows that I meant test. So there's sort of a few aliases built into npm, which I think is kind of cool. And we'll get into npm run command and just npm command, like differences, in just a second. Okay. So just did it. to open the git config with nano and added it there finally. That's cool. Very good. Um, so currently we are only using one dependency, which is express. And let's do this. So we go back here and we say npm start, and then we go back upstairs, in here, and then we say hello mom instead of hello world. And then we do the curl thing again. We get hello world back. So why is that? We just changed the code to hello mom. So why do we get hello world? That is because we started the server here at the bottom with the old code, right? And when we changed the file and we haven't restarted our server since then. And that can really be a pain in the, during development. So that's why we usually start our servers in a so-called watch mode during development, so that the process is not only just running and listening on the port, but it's also watching the file system. And whenever a JavaScript file or any file that matters changes, I will just restart the server immediately so that we get the latest changes always, right? So um, I will open this again, kill the server, and then I will install a new package that helps with that watch mode. And it's called nodemon, and we install it as a def dependency. So the I is just short for install, and the dash and then capital D is short for def dependency. So I'll install that. And in the package.json, we can now see that we have a new def dependency. And def dependency just means that that is a dependency we only need during development. So if we were to ship this app and deploy to BTP, obviously, to Cloud Foundry, this def dependency wouldn't be installed because that is a productive environment, right? But this right here is a def environment, and the environment is actually part of an environment variable of the process, but maybe we'll get to that later. So we installed this one def dependency, and now we can add a new script, and we call it def, and we say instead of node index.js, we say nodemon index.js, which basically means start this thing in watch mode. Okay, so now I will say npm run def, and now we can see we get some more output. We, see that it's watching some extensions. So it's watching all the JavaScript files, the ESM JavaScript files, the CommonJS JavaScript files, and also the JSON files. And it's then running on port 3000. Okay. So now if we kill all of that and we do the curl thing again, we now get hello mom, right? That's the latest code. So let's change it back to hello world. Like, oh, yeah. So we can actually see that the server restarted here. So it says restarting due to changes, all good. So let's do the curl thing again, and we now get hello world, right? So we now have the watch mode as well. There we go. And that is actually all the things that I had planned for today. So I didn't know how much stuff I had to prepare. Uh, I didn't do a dry run. I just rolled with it. So it's just 45 minutes, but I think that's fine. We will get back to it next week, same time, Wednesday. And yeah, we will actually start with some client-side code then as well. All right. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Thanks so much for staying patient with the whole audio thing and all of that at the start, but we'll figure it out along the way. So thanks everyone for that fun first episode. Thanks for being so active in the chat. And yeah, I hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you.